Do you struggle to talk to new people? Are you in your head on dates thinking about what to say next? Then there's only one thing you need to do. You need to be talking to yourself out loud as much as possible. Yes, like you're slightly insane, sitting in a room alone, rocking back and forth, trying to say everything that's on your mind. I talk to so many guys who feel like they don't know how to express themselves, or open up, or be a little bit more loose and playful, or share stories, and the answer is the same. Your voice is an instrument that you need to use as often as possible. The more you do, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more kind of connection you make to your internal thoughts or emotions to your external voice. If you're always just trapped in your head, and the only time you're really speaking is with other people, that's your only opportunity to kind of practice. There's no great public speaker or actor or content creator who just shows up in the moment and tries to nail it. No, what do? They stand in front of a mirror and they recite what they want to say. They play around with their voice. They get used to messing with their speech patterns. They try different words. And in turn, it just makes them so much more fluid and loose when they are actually showing up in the high tension moments. I had to do the same thing. I've been coaching for 16 years and I've hosted retreats and I've done public speeches. But when I started doing more video content a few years ago, I kind of had to learn how to express myself on camera talking to no one in the same way. When I started just like turning on the camera and really trying to deliver things perfectly, it was so stressful. I was overthinking things. I was stumbling over my own words, and it just made the process miserable, and it came out sounding awkward and fake. The answer was, I had to either turn off my camera or just let it keep running and mess around for a while. If I was going to talk about a subject, I just kind of spitballed and let myself ramble and sound stupid and be imperfect and mess up and get comfortable with that. And again, this is important on so many levels. It's important to working through the discomfort you feel of hearing your own voice. It allows you to mess with your pitch and your tone and your expressiveness and to get used to being a bit more dynamic. You get to take your time, and when you're thinking about talking about a subject or answering a question, for example, you really get to explore that. You get to dig and try to get to something more interesting rather than just like the default quick surface level answers you're going to give. And so when I'm teaching guys how to get better at a million different social skills or flirting skills, this is the primary avenue that I'm telling them to practice. Let me give you some examples. So if you're trying to learn how to introduce yourself to a random woman on the street, then what you can do is you can like see a woman from afar that you'd want to talk to, and even under your breath, just practice what you'd actually say to her and get comfortable with that. Or on your way back home when you're sitting in your car, you can try out different things that you could have made little comments on, or you can practice being more forward and saying, hey, I saw you sitting over here and I really wanted to come say hi. If you're trying to get used to being more flirtatious and you can never look a woman in her eyes on a date and say, hey, I really love how ambitious you are, I find that extremely attractive, then you need to practice that out loud, alone. So pull up some photos of women online or on any of the dating apps or on Instagram or somebody you're talking to. Look at the photo and actually say what you want to tell her, and do it enough times that you feel it and that it feels good when you do it, so that you have a little actually intention and you're not just saying it quickly and lightheartedly on a date like, hey, I like how ambitious you are, it's really cool. But you actually slow down and say it with some strength where you can tell her, I love how ambitious you are. I think that's really sexy. If you don't know how to like open up and express more about yourself, then you can take a subject that you talked about with somebody recently and interview yourself. Just ask yourself lots and lots of questions around that idea. So maybe if you talked about going to EDM shows, start asking yourself, why do I like EDM shows? How did I get into them in the first place? What kind of a concert goer am I? What's the best story I've had at a show? What's my most memorable experience? You can even Google thought-provoking questions to ask yourself. There's another technique called the 7 whys, where you start with a simple question just to get the ball rolling, and then after you answer that question, you keep asking yourself why to get to more emotional and personal and meaningful answers. Because that's what people want to hear from you. They don't want to hear the surface level small talk shit. They want to actually get to know you and to be able to open up themselves. So it might start with, why do I love EDM shows? And you might say, oh, just because it's fun and I really love the music and it gets me fired up. Well, why do you love the music and why does it get you fired up? I don't know. I grew up listening to a lot of techno back in the day, and I would dance in my computer chair while I played Counter-Strike, and so it kind of holds a special place in my heart. Well, why? Because some of the best times in my life was being a professional gamer and even having LAN parties where we'd listen to music and just like have an awesome time together. I guess you never really grow out of what you love. And you keep going through that because in the moment, you want to be able to tell people who you really are, your emotions, your experiences, things that are more personal and meaningful, because that's what makes connections. I'm not saying it has to be like heavy, dark stuff. It can be like positive, even like fun, ambitious, lighthearted things, but they should be more real because that's what somebody is going to feel connected to on a actual level. And that's what's going to encourage them to open up as well. Practice telling your stories. Write down a bunch of memories that are important to you or really fun and that stand out and just explore. Like paint the picture, talk through it, try to visualize it, how you felt. And so that when you actually have to say that story in the moment, you can make it engaging and gripping and exciting and not just like bland facts of I went to Colombia, I had some friends with me, and it was a good time. You have to understand that your brain is really stupid. It often doesn't understand if you're expressing yourself to an actual person or just out loud to nothing. I mean, they have this in programming and software where they call it rubber duck coding or rubber duck debugging, where like you speak out loud your problem to a rubber duck and it helps you process things. They also have this in therapy and internal family systems where they'll have somebody like put a doll that represents their father and they'll try to say the really hard conversations that they've been avoiding and how they feel to their dad, and it still ends up making them feel like they can do that when the time comes. They go through the motions, they know how they feel, they connect to their thoughts, they get used to hearing themselves say these really intense or difficult things, and then boom, you pop them in front of their father and they can replicate the same thing. So whether you want to learn how to talk to more people or be more self-expressive, or especially, I know a lot of you guys want to learn how to get more flirtatious and sexual, and you're like, I just can't do this in the one date I have because I don't want to mess it up and blow my chances, then practice, practice, practice. I have taken guys who've never, ever had any kind of sexual experience with a woman, done the idea where they're looking at some photos and telling women how they feel about them and how they're attracted to them. And then all of a sudden, we go and we talk to a new person out and about, and they're able to actually compliment these women and look them in the eyes and say something that they thought they would never, ever be able to say. You know, whenever a client sees me out and talking to women or people, and they're like, this just comes so naturally to you, and it's so easy. Bullshit. You have no idea how many hours I've put in on the back end of just practicing. I told you, I played video games professionally most of my teenage years. I ran a gaming blog. I sat behind a computer and did not know how to talk to women. And what got me so much better is just being able to mess around and listen to myself and get used to the way I talk and mess around with my voice and get a little weird and get a little crazy so that I felt comfortable doing it with anyone. And you can do the same thing. If you go on one date and you're talking for an hour of that date, you've had an hour of practice. If you spent the next month just taking 20 minutes a day while you're already doing something at your house, watching TV or playing a game, and just practice these ideas out loud, you're going to get 10 hours in, which is 10 times the amount of practice you would have had otherwise. Can you imagine how different you'd feel in just a month? So write down a bunch of subjects that you've talked about on dates or things that you're passionate about and interview yourself. Or watch one of my videos on flirting and try that idea and get used to expressing your desires as much as possible. So if you want to be more charismatic to others, talk when no one's listening. And if you want to know exactly what to say when introducing yourself, then check out my video here.